Howdy, just want to comment real quickly on four things in particular that have become more prominent in the last few years with respect to why our federal government doesn't seem to be able to accomplish anything of significance, either from either party's perspective. And it's issues that, or they are issues that both parties, I would suggest, are guilty of failing to use to the advantage of American governance and just use to grandstand and pursue their own political power ends as opposed to trying to govern effectively. The first, I think, the President Biden situation highlights the pointlessness of the 25th Amendment as it's currently structured. The fourth paragraph of that amendment doesn't really provide a very meaningful way to determine the inability of the president to serve, and it doesn't provide a very meaningful way to overrule the president if he or she declares on a good day that, in fact, he or she is able to serve. And so I think the whole process of holding the president accountable, of being able to determine the ability of the president to serve, not agreement with or disagreement with his or her policy proposals, but the actual physical and mental ability to serve, it needs to be amended to provide for an outside counsel that would, at the very least, advise and be responsible for monitoring the health, physical and mental, of the president to ensure that it is the president of the United States who is day to day, moment to moment, leading the United States. The second thing is this issue of declaring national emergencies to address different circumstances. I don't remember precisely if the war on drugs was declared a national emergency. I kind of remember that it was, or suspect that it was, but President Trump has taken the national emergency issue to a whole new level. But there needs to be some kind of a bipartisan commission that would analyze any declared emergencies to determine if, in fact, a national emergency is the right way to approach or address the situation. Now, the situation, at least with respect to immigration, that President Trump is trying to deal with is unique in one sense because rather than declaring a national emergency for the fact that our immigration system was overwhelmed, President Biden took actions that actually facilitated the creation of a national emergency. And now I would suggest, and now President Trump is trying to respond. But I don't think the two wrongs remain a right or make a right. And I think one of the problems that we have is each party, as they change positions of power, are acting in ways unilaterally that each party might be happy with, that do not, in fact, reflect the best way of governing in a democratic or a representative republic. The third thing is the congressional hearings and oversight committees. For a long time, since they become more and more a feature of news and uh, YouTube clips, etc., the whole point of these committees seems to be lost. I looked into it a while back, and as I recall, the point of having this authority, this power vested in Congress, was to analyze situations to determine what kind of laws ought to be passed to effectively address situations that Congress is not fully vetted on. I think now they are often little more than political theater, and the fact that Congress people on both sides of the aisle consistently make claims that are at best dubious and at worst just outright lies with no accountability has turned these into pointless exercise and a waste of taxpayer money, and as far as I can tell, serve no purpose in actually resulting in legislation being passed. It would be helpful if every time we call these hearings, the degree to which they are supposed to be geared towards guiding policymaking, there was actually a declared policy that was being analyzed, and then following the hearings, a law that could be tied directly to the policies and based on the information gained in these hearings, these meetings. The last thing that I'll mention just quickly is the failure to declare war, as I recall, since World War II, maybe even Vietnam, but since World War II, and to invoke war powers held by Congress and the president's continuing to get us involved in situations overseas, either directly through military personnel or indirectly through equipment and funds that are sent to nations that are at war with each other for different reasons. The fact that we have had the largest military budget as a nation by far for the last several decades over any other nation on earth, the fact that we have had this budget when the world has essentially been at peace in many respects, notwithstanding the role that America has played in securing that peace, and the fact that we are now with $37 trillion of debt facing a world that I would argue and have argued in other places, and will point to others like Mearsheimer, Professor Mearsheimer, for arguments that suggest that the actions taken over the last 40 or 50 years have in fact brought us to a point where the world is in worse shape, not better shape. I would just suggest that we actually consider these four areas, and with respect to the military, that we have a requirement, should the president involve us in any kind of military activity, even selling arms to other nations, that we have a 60-day maximum window in which Congress reviews what is taking place to either bring it to an end or to make a formal declaration of America's activity and involvement in conflicts. Anyway, look forward to hearing what you have to say. Thank you very much for your time. Bye-bye. Thank you very much for your time. I've got a couple other videos listed here if you'd like to take a look at those. And as I'd like to discuss issues related to politics, religion, society, and how in the world we're supposed to understand ourselves and life in the world. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Bye bye.